Welcome to Kolme Group's Clarisn function in the Flash, where each episode we introduce you to a new Clarisn function and show you how to use it. Hi, I'm Kim Messenger, one of the founding partners of Kolme Group, one of the premier partners for Clarisn. I'm a certified PMP, and I've built and run project delivery organizations and have been working with Clarisn since about 2015.
And I'm Kyle Moynihan. I'm a PMP and an MBA in international business, and I've run projects all over the world. I'm fluent in French, Spanish, and Clarisn, and I love teaching others all three of these languages.
All right. What function are we doing today, Kyle?
Today, we'll be looking at DateDiff.
I like DateDiff. It's of all the date functions, I think this is the one I use the most.
Yeah, and it's also incredibly straightforward.
And that's probably why I use it the most.
Exactly. So DateDiff returns the amount of time between two dates, and it returns it as a number.
Right. So you specify what does that interval mean, whether it's a day, week, month, or year, and the function will return an integer or a number.
Exactly. So if you look at the syntax, you see you have date time 1, date time 2, and then the third parameter is interval, where you'd put in D for days, M for months, W for weeks, Y for years. And this allows you to see how much time there is between, for example, a start date and a due date of a project. And in the example shown right there, we're asking it to return it to us as calendar weeks.
Right. And a tip here is that whatever that interval is, it has to be in quotes, or else you'll fail your syntax check. And it will return a fraction too. It'll return a decimal if you don't have a full unit in between those two dates.
That's a really good thing to remember. Another one is that when you're inputting the dates, it's important to remember that you put the later date first and then the earlier or sooner date second. Otherwise, it will return a negative number.
And I like this tip because I know for me, for a long time, I never could remember which was the date I put first. Did I put the greater date first or the greater date second? And then very often after I would configure the function, I would go look at my number. It would be negative when I expected it to be positive, or vice versa, to be positive when I expected it to be negative. So the large number goes first if you want to end up with a positive number.
Exactly. I think the way it happens is that we put things in a logical sequence. If we read from left to right, we think earlier first and then later second. But this is more like math, where the later number or greater number goes first, and then you subtract out the smaller number.
Excellent.
Also, if you need organization or calendar days, so your working days, to be taken into consideration when viewing the time between two dates, you need to use DateSubtract, because DateDiff will only return calendar days.
Right. So if you need to subtract a working duration, so if I subtract 40 hours and I expect that to equal a week, well, then I should be using DateSubtract. Whereas DateDiff is straight up calendar duration. So 40 hours is going to be, less than 2 days. All right, Kyle, can you show us how this function works?
Absolutely. So first, what I will show you is here in my Clarisn instance, I've created a custom action to just show how DateDiff works. So here it's asking me to select two dates. Now remember, we'll choose the date that's later in the future. And then today, for example, and we want this to be returned in days. And here we see 21, because it's exactly 3 weeks out. It is 21 calendar days away.
Right. And so it's a number, it's not a duration. Now, can you do that again, but let's put the bigger number second?
Sure.
And show what happens.
And see, this is what I meant when I was saying, intuitively, you might think you should put the closer number first, because it feels like what comes first is this date, and what comes later or second is the later date. But you can see when you do that, it will return the negative number.
Yeah. And depending on what you're doing, you may be actually looking for that. Great. I've got another use case that we've walked through. Let's demonstrate that one too. Now, one of my favorite ways to use this function is looking at the age of things. And in this case, let's take a look at the age of the last status report. And what we do in this case is when a custom action is triggered to update the status on a project or send a status report, we have an automation that it creates a timestamp on the project. And so if you scroll down on that one, Kyle, you can see a row of a number of projects we've got. And then we've got a column here, the second to the last one, which is the last status report date. And what we very often want to see is, well, show me all the projects where somebody has not done the status report in a very long time. And so what we've done here is you can see that last column is the days since the last status, and they are fractional because that's the way this function works. But I'm using DateDiff to calculate the difference between today and the last status report date. And that lets me filter and show all those projects that have an old one. I can even build a chart, which I've done at the top, to show me all of my naughty project managers, which we have outstanding status reports for. And I use a stacked bar chart just to show the age of each individual status report update. But if we could, Kyle, let's jump in and take a look at the configuration for these. Let's go to the edit screen. And if we go down to the table and click on columns, and on the right, you see my formula column, days since last status. Let's edit that and look at the formula. And here you can see we've used DateDiff to look at the difference between organizational now, which is today's date time adjusted for whatever my time zone is, and the difference between that and the last status report date that I've stamped on the projects in days.
And presumably that last status report date, as it's in the past, organizational now or today is the greater number, and last status report date is the lesser number because it's before.
Right. If it came out negative, then someone can see into the future and is forecasting future status reports sometime out before it's happened.
That would be an interesting functionality.
I would hire that project manager. And that's DateDiff. If you have questions on this function, you can hit us up on our website at kolmegroup.com, and we'll be happy to help you out.
Thank you very much, Kim. And that's DateDiff.
I love DateDiff. Thanks for showing us that, Kyle.
Yeah, and as I mentioned at the beginning, this is an incredibly straightforward function, and I feel like this is probably the quickest one of these videos we've done.
Yeah, it's pretty super easy. If you have any questions on this function, hit us up on kolmegroup.com, and we'll be happy to help you out.
If you found this useful and are really ready to take your Clarissen skills to the next level, check out the link below for Kolme University, or reach out for individual consulting and training for you and your organization.